Hey, welcome. Happy summer. It's officially summer now. I'm Barbara Tanner Wallace. I'm here with my bestie, Donna Jones Allward, and we are the hosts of Step Into the Story.
We are.
Earlier this month, Donna and I were at the Historical Novel Society conference in San Antonio, and you may have seen some of the shenanigan photos up. There were about 300 historical fiction writers. It was the first time I think we had gotten together at a conference in 4 years?
Yeah, since 2019.
And the vibe though was great.
It was. I think you and I went with similar objectives, which was to go and just enjoy it and soak it all in. And we did. You went on a little excursion to the Alamo, I think.
Yeah. It was the shortest excursion to the Alamo ever. We walked down. I was with Renee Ryan and another friend, and we walked down. It was hot. We got there. We looked at it, and we were like, "Oh, they charge you to get in? Never mind." And then we turned around and we're back. We're like, "Man, we're hot, so we're done."
Well, and that was the thing. Like, and I know when you guys did that, I was working the registration desk, so I didn't go along. But then, like, it was 37 degrees. I was like, well, because I'm the Celsius girl. But anyway, that's freaking hot. If it's 30 here, I'm hot. So 37 was a lot. So I was like, no. But the conference itself was fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. And a lot of the authors that we covered here at Step Into the Story were there.
Yeah.
And I didn't most much, but you more than me, they spent a lot of time with them. Every time I turned around, you were talking to some big time author.
I know you call me Kevin Bacon, which just makes me laugh.
I did. For those who are watching, Donna is the Kevin Bacon of the writing world. Any writer you name.
That's funny. Yeah. So, well, before I talk about the authors that I saw, though, I just want to give a hat tip to the board of the HNS, because that was one of the best run conferences I think I've ever been to. The food was good. The conversations were good. Like, not just with the published authors that we featured here and got to meet in person, but like just if you sat down at a table and started talking, like interesting conversations all the way around. Like it was such a relaxed vibe. It was just the best time.
Yeah, a lot of times you go to these writer conferences and it's like people are living Facebook pages. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
all they're showing you is their highlights. They're constantly telling you about how this did well and that did well, and my agent wanted this, and they're on promo 100% of the time. And I don't think anyone was on promo.
Not really.
I mean, if you ask, what are you reading, or what do you write? Do you have a book out? Do you have a bookmark? I mean, you actually physically asked people for promo material.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they did, they were very quick to recommend someone else's book.
Yeah,
because they were excited about like other things that they'd read. So it was a great vibe, and maybe it was the small number. 300 is not a huge conference, but it was big enough to be robust. So anyway, just a big hat tip to the board, because they did a great job.
They were hustling too.
But yes, I did see some of our Step Into the Story featured authors and guests and whatnot. So I had coffee with Noelle Salazar, who she was a featured author with Angels of the Resistance. She was super sweet, and that led to me meeting one of her good friends, Elise Hooper, who is just a doll. She is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And then you and I both ended up having a great chat with Madeline Martin and Eliza Knight.
Yep.
And because we ended up at a table at lunch with them. And
we're going to be on later this year with featured authors.
Yes. Eliza's in August, and I think Madeline is in October.
Yeah,
both with new releases, so they're going to be guesting here. And Sarah Penner, we met Sarah Penner, and
sweetest thing in the world.
She's so down to earth and sweet, and I think she seems a little shy to me. So it was really nice to talk to her. And of course, we just finished talking about the London Seance Society earlier this month,
because she was super excited.
And the time just seems to be like,
we sent her the link because she was really excited about it. And my one bit of tea from the whole thing in the conference, she just shortly after we found out she signed a big deal.
Yeah.
Publishing deals. So she's going to have more books coming out, that's my tea. Sarah Penner has more books. Oh, surprise.
And then I met, so when I was chatting with Noelle and Elise, we went up to the bookstore, and Elise recommended The Librarian of Burned Books, and by Brianna Labruskes, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, of course, I bought it, because of course, and went to the book signing, and so I met her and discovered that she's a big hockey fan, and this was right when NHL playoff finals were on, so there might have been some hockey talk. So it was really nice to catch up with some authors that, you know, we've chatted to virtually but haven't seen in person.
Yeah, it was really nice to see those people. And speaking of buying books, one of the things that happens at every writers conference is that you come home with a bunch of new ones. So what did you come home with?
I came home with, so like I said, The Librarian of Burned Books. I'm going to grab one. Just hang on, because it's too pretty not to show. And I also came home with Elise Hooper's Fast Girls and A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice, which is by Rebecca Connolly, and it's a Titanic book. So, of course, I was going to get that one. And then I also got Kate Khavari's A Botanist's Guide to Flowers and Fatality.
I got the same thing, yeah.
I know. And I know it's like reversed because of the camera, but I think that's such a great title and such a gorgeous cover that there was no way I was not bringing it.
Victorian-era botanist. Like late Victorian-era botanist solving murders. Like,
there was just no way I was not going to bring that home.
And I sat next to her in a bunch of conferences. I didn't know it was her. We were just chatting.
She is like super young.
And super bouncy and sweet. And we got to get her on the show. We should get her on the show.
She's lovely.
She's great. And I get extra points because I have a friend who's a botanist and a big reader. And I texted her and I'm like, I just bought a book about a Victorian botanist who solves murder. And she's like, link, please.
Oh, nice.
She immediately bought it because she's like, I've been waiting for a botanist solving criminal.
Okay, you know what? This is why we do step into the story. Yeah. Like, no joke. This is why.
Oh, yeah. She didn't know there was one. What's that?
What did you come home with?
I came home with that, and I bought Noelle's Angel of Resistance.
Right.
Because I hadn't read it yet. And her next book, which is set in the 1920s.
Yes.
Yes. Be my book mail in a couple weeks because I pre-ordered that.
Yeah.
And then
the title is something Zora Lily.
Yes.
Because
it's about a woman seeking revenge.
Yeah, and the name comes from her. I think her grandmother. I think is what she mentioned.
Right. It's about her cousin seeking revenge about somebody.
Details about that are actually in the broadcast that we did when she was a featured author. So
I can't wait to read it. I mean, like
Mafia
Revenge. It's just so cool. And then I got Pilot's Daughter by Meredith Jaeger, who is
I haven't read that one.
Okay, so here's the premise. It's World War II. The pilot is killed in action. So they send home his effects. And the daughter and the mother are going through them. And in the pocket of his overcoat, the daughter finds a stack of love letters.
Not from his mother.
So then it goes back in time to tell the story of how it's a dual timeline, but it's really only a couple of years apart. But how he met this woman and fell in love with her. And so she's learning, falling in love with something, and like this just sounds too juicy, and that there was stuff about her parents' marriage she didn't know.
Right.
So it sounds really good, and I went to her workshop, which was fantastic. So I'm like, okay, the book's good.
Done. Yeah.
The two of us came up with a huge master list of books we heard about and that we're getting buzzed about.
Yeah.
We will post both in the YouTube comments and in this Facebook group. We will post our master list. There's got to be 25 or 30 titles, but there were a lot of people talking about a lot of books, and we took notes. So you guys are all going to have things.
Yes, your TV like add some money to your book budget. But that's really not why we went, though.
That is no, and we were there to learn how to get better. We love craft talk, and that's the whole point of the writer's room. And we promised we would bring back tips.
Yes,
so we're going to share some of them right now. And we don't have any graphics, but this is more of a low key one. We'll come up with something. Maybe we'll write them up later too. But my first tip is from Libbie Hawker, who wrote the upcoming "The Fire and the Ore," and it was regarding scenes or chapters and pacing. And she said, every chapter presents an issue or a challenge. So think of the scene as a stack of inverse pyramids. or even the chapter is a stack, but like the inverse pyramid, at the beginning of the scene, your character has the most options. And as the scene goes on or the chapter goes on, the options get fewer and fewer and fewer until she's down to the one only thing she can do. And when you hit then, change chapters or jump scenes or jump POV so that your people are left waiting.
Well, that also means that you're ending that scene on a hook.
Right. Yeah. And I thought that was a great way to look at it with, looking at it as going through the different options though, too, that it's not just a lot of rambling introspection and then they get to it. She's got to kind of think through all her options till she realizes, oh, the only choice I have is to marry this old guy, but.
Well, and what's funny now that, because I know this isn't in our show notes, but just hearing you talk about it and ending on hooks, a lot of the time we get to what we feel is like the natural end of a chapter. And we're like, okay, but I need to end this on a hook. Like I got to think of some way to whatever. But if you actually follow that in a structure kind of way, then your hook is there.
But it's not going to be a forced hook. It's not going to be something like.
It's not manufactured. It's naturally there.
We want her or something like that, that question or something. It's just the die was cast. She was going to have no choice.
Right.
Boom. So
it actually is a structure that supports ending on a hook rather than getting there and thinking, oh, but I need a hook.
And Libbie has a book called Take Your Pants Off, which is her writing guide.
Yes.
And I will put that link in. I'm going to have these are going to be the longest show notes known to man, but it's a great read. It's worth it. She did the workshop and this is based on that.
And you did her masterclass, right?
Yes. So people who are interested in learning about pacing and story structure, Write with Your Pants Off, Take Your Pants Off by Libbie Hawker.
Yeah. All right. So my first tip is from James Scott Bell. And I went to his workshop, Page Turning Secrets of the Pros. And, excuse me, he used a graph to show when you should tell and when you should show. Because, when we talk to other writers or as we're writing our own stories, it's like, it's okay to tell once in a while. The whole show don't tell kind of thing it's true, but there are times when it's okay to tell. And I've never been able to articulate when that is. And then he shows this graph and it's like this light bulb just went off in my head. So I don't have the graph for you, but you actually don't need it because if you just think of it as a scale from 1 to 10, and the scale is the emotional intensity of your scene. So if your emotional intensity is from 0 to 5, you're in the tell zone. So this is one of those things where, it's the connective tissue that gets you to the next scene where big things happen. Mm-hmm. And so it's okay to tell here. You don't have to dig super deep. But then if the emotional intensity is from 6 to 10, that's when you want to slow down, really dig into the deep point of view, make sure you're showing and not just telling and really drawing your reader in. And then after I like that just explained it so like in a way I could understand. And then I got thinking after, this also solves so many pacing questions.
It does.
Because, a lot of times we're like, well, the story started to drag here. And it's like, yeah, because it's a low intensity scene. And so you're actually okay to make it shorter, do a little bit of telling as to what the reader needs to know, and then move on to the actual, and we can actually use that to relate to like scene and sequel and the whole thing. So anyway, I just thought it was a brilliant way to explain it, or at least the way that my mind understood.
Okay, so I just had a brilliant idea.
What?
We will show some of these visuals on our Instagram page, which is Step Into the Storybooks. So those of you who follow us on Instagram will get to see these cool visuals because we will actually share them. So
yeah, we will do that. That's a great idea.
I can do that once in a while.
Look at us doing stuff on the fly.
All right, we're flexible here.
All right, so what's your next tip?
Okay, it's also from James Scott Bell because he gave the keynote or one of the keynotes, and it was a lovely keynote. I know you had to leave for. I think you were.
I didn't feel well partway through. He's also just a lovely man, by the way.
He did, and he talked a lot about in time. I had a quote from him. It's not the tip, but one of his quotes was something like, "In times of uncertainty, in a world that encompasses such pain and terror and insecurity, it's noble to provide an escape and write genre fiction." And he was talking about writing from the heart. and that, you should be putting love into everything you write. But his comment was, and it's going to be my new mantra, write like you're in love, edit like you're in charge. And to me, it's perfect because it encapsulates, we talk good, what it is for a working writer's life. You don't take a lot of time to overthink everything. Just put everything on the page. Don't be afraid to write as fearlessly as possible. Throw it out there. Then take a step back, put on your editor's hat, and look at it like not as a writer, but as an editor would, and say, okay, now I'm going to look at it objectively. Or find and I will get objective opinions and be a business person.
Right. I actually love that tip. And that was, if you hadn't brought that up when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about today, I was going to, because that really allows your creativity to soar as you're writing that first draft, and it tells your internal editor to shut up. And, you just fall in love with the story and everything. And then when it's all done, then you get to go back like the boss lady you are and go in and actually mold it and shape it and do all those things to really craft it into something extraordinary. So
it was a good reminder, because he was talking about people are so hesitant to kill something they love. And it was a good reminder that, okay, no, you did the birthing part and that's your baby, but now you got to turn it over to the teacher who's going to make it a better baby.
Well, and
that metaphor really didn't work, but
Do you remember what I said when we were up in the concierge lounge once, and I know I horrified somebody because I said, like, it's just words. If you lose them, if you cut them.
Oh yeah,
it's not a finite thing. There's always more words. Don't get too wound up about deleting something, because you can always write more words.
Right, and I think it was that quote that prompted that, possibly. But
yeah. Anyway, that was yeah.
Did you get anything from the keynotes?
I did. I find keynotes so inspiring, and there's always some nugget in there somewhere that just hits me, like gives me something that I need to hear. And I think my favorite keynote speaker was Jamie Ford. He's he's funny and a bit self-deprecating. He's very low key, and I had a conversation with him as well. We were in an elevator together, and he was I know, right? But he was just so kind and like, just there was no self-importance, anyway. He was my fave. I'm total fangirl now.
For those who didn't know, he wrote at the hotel at the corner of Bitter and Sweet. And his whole keynote speech was about how it was an assigned reading assignment for his daughter, which was actually pretty funny.
And all the tweets from students around like the country who were like looking for the spark notes or whatever, and
Beowulf every day of my life.
Yeah, we're like, hotel on the corner of Bitter and Sweet should be hotel on the corner of Bitter and what was it after?
Something bitter and put my eye out or something. These kids
were like, it was funny. But anyway, he was great. But he had this he was talking about one of his books, and he had this example of a gasp moment in this book. And when he gave us the example, the whole room collectively went, like you could just hear it ripple through the room. And, that's the kind of thing that you need in every story. And so I guess my next tip would really be to not be afraid to give the unexpected, to challenge your reader and challenge your characters, and not be afraid to put something in there that changes everything, that's going to make your reader sit back and go like, whoa. So, and it actually made me feel good, because I thought I have that moment in my upcoming book. And because I remember my editor in her comments, like in the sidebar, it was like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And I thought, well, okay, like I did my job. But these are the things that set your book apart from other stories. It's what makes it memorable for your readers. So don't be afraid to go there.
And this actually is going to merge into with my third tip, but if you remember Only the Beautiful by Susan Meiser, had a couple huge gasp moments. There is one coming towards the end where the father is talking about his daughter who was killed at the hands of the Nazis, and his comments. I never have gasped out loud in a book. That one was.
Yeah, I remember, and we're always talking about how like we text each other as we're reading, but I remember you texting me and going like, "Oh my god!"
And that's you. That is, if you can pull that off, if you can make someone gasp because they were so invested, and then it suddenly came. All the clues were there, but it was still a surprise, and you could really, like, yeah. So the reason I said it ties into my third tip is because I don't know if you know this, Donna, but I think Susan Meisner is one of the smartest writers out there today.
Yeah, and you know me, I will go to any workshop that she teaches, full stop.
Exactly. And
you could be teaching like how to make ice cubes, and I would be like, take my money, I'm gonna go.
And I will be taking notes.
Right?
Because I will learn a better way. And she talked about making setting a character. And her tip was that when you create your stories, don't just say, okay, it's going to be set here. Create the setting like you would a character. Make it real, make it memorable, imbue it with an emotional quality that connects with the reader. Make it almost a living, breathing thing. And I thought that was a great tip because I never thought about it. Usually you say, oh, I'm going to set it here. But then sometimes that setting becomes such an integral part of your story. So take the time to really give your setting a personality.
Now that you say that, it's kind of like if you could remove the setting and set this story anywhere else, then your setting's not working hard enough.
That's an excellent way to put it.
I just thought of that.
You're on the fly brilliance again.
I've had sleep. I don't know. But she is brilliant though. And she talked about macro and micro settings, which I had never heard, them being separated that way. But like a macro setting is sort of your overarching setting of time and place. So, and I love the example she used of The Sound of Music, because pretty much everybody knows The Sound of Music, but Austria, like the Abbey, the mountains, the house, are like a macro setting. But then within that, you have micro settings, which are like the gazebo, where like it's not only important for Liesel and Rolf, but also for the captain and Maria. And then I was thinking too, like the dance scene that's outside the ballroom.
Yeah,
like that's a micro setting. So
the micro settings are affected by the macro setting. She also Gone with the Wind is another great thing, though.
Right. And then each setting has a mood.
Yes.
Just like your character has a mood, each setting has a mood, and it all connects together. And anyway, I would just, yeah.
So definitely.
So taking it in sort of a different direction, less about craft and more about, I guess, research. I went to the Lesser Trod Corners of World War II books with Marika Biagio and Suzanne Perry. And a lot of the books that are on our reading list that we're going to share come from this workshop, because I came out of there going, oh my God, I'm going to be broke. And then also, oh my God, I've already read that. But I came away with a list of how to with research. And it was more like not anything really I didn't know, but it kind of just put it in a different way so that I have a list that as I'm researching, I can be like, okay, did I get something from this kind of source? It's just sort of a checklist to make sure I'm really thorough. So there's diaries, biographies, and interviews, which, anything that's a firsthand account is really great. Then like obituaries, magazines, museums, and then they mentioned newspapers.com, which I already use. And I love that resource. I love being able to like search for an actual topic within a date and then within an area. Like, so with the Halifax explosion, I was like, I want to know what was in the paper on December 19th, in 1917 in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I want to search for the term. And then it highlights them all in yellow. Like it's so helpful. And then the other one was to read fiction set in the time that you're researching or during the event. And so now I have 5 or 6 fiction books set during the sinking of the Titanic.
There you go.
On my shelf. So, but yeah, that was a really fun workshop for me. That didn't really give me anything like this big revelation or anything, but it just sort of added to my experience. Yeah.
So we both went to a marketing workshop. It was
Yes.
with Laura Morelli and Crystal King.
Yes.
And we came away with some different tools, which the thing one of the interesting things is that those tracking cookies, the ones that we're all convinced, you know how like you looked up Hermes scarves and then like 2 days later on Facebook, all the ads are Hermes scarves. They're going away. They made me so happy. In 2024, those will no longer exist.
I have a love-hate relationship with those because it's also how people find my books. But anyway,
I was like, yay. But my bigger tip was that you use your social media posts to drive people off of social media and onto your newsletter email list. You know, rather than which we've known the focus should not be on gaining as many followers as possible, but taking those followers that next step. And so your posts should be kind of created with the idea that you're trying to build them to come to your site and then get on your blog list or your mailing list.
Right.
You know, like if you're on Substack, that's a great way to drive people there and show them that there's content that you can give them. And Substack creates a mailing list. So I thought that was that was a tip it was a good reminder. I knew it, but it was a really good way.
Well, and just like the cookies are going away, we never know when something else is going to go away or it's going to change. So anytime you drive something to your mailing list or something like a subscriber list of some sort, that then becomes proprietary. And so it doesn't matter if, you know, wherever you've been on socials blows up, then you still have your list because it's yours. So I think that's a really good tip. I also went to a marketing workshop, which was on supercharging your author event. And the one thing I came away with, I came away with a few things, but the one thing I want to highlight is that both authors said that book clubs worked really well for them as far as events, and both in person and virtual. So I came away thinking about how to put together a book club package. So not just, you know, showing up virtually and saying hi or whatever, but actually putting a package together so that, you know, you get chosen and then how to do some outreach so that you are on a list, like somewhere like Novel Network or something where
you know who does a very good job of that? And I have her book, so I will pin her book just because she did such a good job. The least I can do is that. Laurie Albanese, who wrote HESTER.
Oh, yes.
Does a fantastic presentation about the witch trials and Salem and the history of persecution in that area. It was I knew a lot of it because live in Massachusetts, we studied it in high school.
Sure.
But for a lot of people at the book club, it was a fascinating thing, and it made you very interested in her book.
Yeah.
Because she tied it into her book, but in a way that it wasn't selling her book, it was giving you information. She does a great job.
Right. And there's other things you can offer too. Like you can offer like PDF resources or something so that it becomes not just, you know, the group talking about the book, but like a whole experience. So anyway, it just got me thinking about doing that as I've got several months to my new release, my historical release, but this is something that I'm going to stick in my toolbox.
There you go. And along those lines, for unpublished authors, Marcy Posner from the Folio Literary touched on something that authors panic all the time because we're always talked about platform. You need to have an established platform. And the answer is, yeah, you do. If you are a nonfiction author, it's 100% you need to have an established platform before you pitch something as an expert.
Right.
But those of you who are pursuing traditional publishing and you haven't yet done anything and you're going, but I only have like 9 followers and 7 of them are cousins. It's on my mailing list, something like that. They know that. They know that you're an unknown. They know you're not going to have a gigantic following. No one expects you to. They expect you to be on social media. They expect you to be working at meeting and networking people, but don't make yourself crazy because she said, no one's looking for a fiction author to do that. We know that comes after the fact. And that I was like, ah.
Yeah, chill out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Use that energy and time to be working on the book.
Yeah, make it a really great book. And, be patient. Everything will come. From that same presentation, I came away with a nugget that I loved. Because that was the state of the state talk after breakfast on Saturday, which was 3 agents and a publishing house rep. Excuse me. And every time I hear someone say, don't follow trends, I want to give a standing ovation. Like, it makes me so excited because there's comfort knowing that, like, good books are just good books. And if you are chasing a trend, then, the key word here is chasing. You're always chasing, you're never leading. And so I think there's and I think you have to be aware that there are some time periods or subjects that are just not as sexy and not as marketable as others. But really just focus on, like, a really great story well told, and don't worry about chasing trends. And I always think that's just really comforting.
I thought so too. And you know what? One of the things that did one of the other agents, Mitchell Waters, made a comment. He said, after the fact, after you've written it, if you can tie it in somehow to a contemporary lesson, then he's like, you can be out of the trend. You don't need to be writing World War II. You could have this book about Romans, but if the story is very applicable because it's very similar to things going on, or you can pitch that it is, then
right.
You're fine.
Right.
So yeah, don't follow trends. And to wrap up, Libbie Hawker's advice was, if you're going to be traditionally published, look for trends coming down the pike, because you do want to have an idea of what's not interested in. But if you're self-publishing, look for niches.
Yes.
And I thought that was a great tip.
Yes. And I think too, if you are looking for some sort of a trend, keep it really general. So, like, World War II will always sell, and we always go through times where people will say such and such is dead. You know what I mean? Or this doesn't sell anymore, or whatever. This is paranormal's dead, and chick lit's dead, or whatever. But everything is cyclical, and it all comes back around again. And the thing is, when things are dead, it just means that particular trend has been glutted. It doesn't mean that none of those books will get published anymore, or they won't sell, at least in my opinion. It means it was really popular, so it's become glutted, and then people will move on to something else. Yeah, but it all comes back around again. All we have to do is look at the romance covers right now that are all illustrated.
That was a super big trend when I first started writing romance.
Right. Like, if we go back to the mid-2000s, the mid-aughts, right? Mm-hmm. That was the trend for those chick lit type of covers, and then they went away, but now they're back again. So that's what I mean about, like, not really wanting to follow a trend. So just write your book the way that it serves the story.
Perfect.
We're always going to come back to that, aren't we?
And that is the perfect place to wrap up. So before we do, though, if you guys missed Donna's conversation with Bryn Turnbull, who is saying I have Writer's Suite is going to be kind of like redundant for me, but it was a great interview. Her book, The Paris Deception, it's an emotionally impactful caper.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's part caper, but there is also some really heavy emotion in dealing with grief and finding your voice. Great book. We both loved it.
We did.
So go back and check out the interview with Bryn, because we want her to get as many shouts out as possible.
Yeah, she's lovely.
And then why don't you tell us what we have coming down the pike?
All right. So next Tuesday, of course, is the 4th. It is the 4th, right?
Yeah, it's a big deal here.
This kitty. Yeah, well, you see, our big deal is Saturday because it's the 1st. Okay. So we're not having anything next Tuesday. Instead, on the 11th, we are talking about Beatrice Williams, The Beach at Summerlee, which Beatrice, as we've never made it a secret, is an auto buy for both of us. So we're both looking forward to that.
I might be a bit of a stalker,
right? Just a little.
The book is out. The book is out today.
Right.
So
Right.
go
And
buy it and
if
read
you
it.
follow her, you will see that she painted her toenails the blue to match the cover. It's funny. And then on the 18th, I know our featured author is Kelly Rimmer. And Barb is going to do that interview. So exciting. Her new book, The Paris Agent, is out on the 11th.
Yep.
And then I'm on hiatus for the end of July, doing a little vacation stuff. So you are going to have a special guest for the writing room for the end of the month.
We are, and we're going to do a deep dive into settings. It's our friend Shirley Jump, who wrote Writing Compelling Fiction. She is a brilliant teacher when it comes to writing. I'm personally looking forward to this episode because I get to ask a question and then Shirley will fill up the next 30 minutes with. So,
well, and the funny thing is, this is right after you and I both did the workshop on setting his character with Susan Meisner. So I'm just like, oh, I'm missing settings, but and that's on the 25th.
And that should be so full of information. People really not want to miss it. You're not going to want to miss anything in July. You are welcome to come join us for me and Kelly when we have our.
I will wait and see. I may just watch and like heckle or something. I don't know. So the 11th and the 18th and the 25th.
Yep.
And of course, on the first Friday of the month, you will be doing your book reviews that you.
I will. Which actually I might bump it because the first. I'm trying to think of the dates. No, I will be doing it because it will be
7th, I think.
The 7th. So yes. On the 7th, I'll be doing a summing up. The only one I might leave out is Beatrice's because
we're going to talk about it on the Tuesday.
But I'm sure in case anyone's spoiler alert, I'll recommend it.
Would we ever not with her? Like, there's a reason she's an auto buy.
Yeah.
All right. We went a little long today, which is just fine. So I think that's it for our writing room for today.
That is. Thank you all for watching. You can follow us at facebook.com/groups/Step Into the Story.
Yep.
Or on Instagram at Step Into the Story Books. I'm going to log up here and make lots of visuals and be sharing them all week with the tips, the visuals and reminders of the tips so people can get them. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Step Into the Story Books.
Perfect.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.